What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. The other day, Nintendo pushed an update for the Switch 2 that looked pretty basic at surface level, but naturally people have been going through and checking in on some of the notes and other aspects to it, and it seems like Nintendo has once again worked to fix some issues with it, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about what I think is a big problem for Valve that's sort of picking up steam right now when it comes to the AI front, and exactly how many games are coming out specifically using AI to create them and what kind of future that could look like there for the platform. And we also have Shadow Labyrinth, which is out today with reviews going live that shows okay debut there for a new take on Pac-Man. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below, and we're gonna start today with Mortal Kombat 2, the movie. There was a new trailer that went out yesterday, and it really just kind of focused in on Karl Urban, who is Johnny Cage, and it almost looked like he's kind of the main character, it felt like anyway, in the movie. But I will say, as I'm watching the trailer, I like what I'm seeing so far because it's still Mortal Kombat, just what they showed. It's still violent and everything there. Some of the supernatural aspects to it, sure, and it looks pretty campy at times. But Karl Urban's take on Johnny Cage, to me, just looks a little too serious. Maybe that's a hot take, I don't know. I like Johnny Cage as kind of the over-the-top, almost just cartoony character at times, with his own name tattooed across his chest, but here it seems to be more of almost a down-to-earth, down-on-his-luck Johnny Cage entering the tournament. But still, I think the movie looks pretty fun. I think it's going to be a good time to see in the theaters, and it's coming out October 24th, so certainly I'll check it out then. Also, it looks like Saber Interactive is teasing an announcement for next week that has everyone kind of speculating as to what they could show up with, and that's because of this website here that just says July 22nd, 2025, so next week. It just says 1 p.m. UTC. And for Saber Interactive right now, they do have a lot of games in development, which kind of makes this difficult to figure out exactly what they could be hinting towards. And if I had to take a guess, it's not KOTOR. So I would put that out of your mind for still a while right now. But right now, the leading theory is Jurassic Park Survival, which we did have a trailer for that, what was that, last year? And it looked interesting to me because it seemed like it would be more of the take on that survival aspect to where you're not ultra powerful running around gunning down dinosaurs. Almost felt more like an Alien Isolation style there, where you're constantly being hunted by different dinosaurs, hiding and trying to make your way through. And I think that could actually be really, really cool in that universe. And for right now, that's sort of what I'm expecting to see, but I guess we'll find out next week. Oh, and remember how we just talked about Cyberpunk 2077 2.3 update, and it was going to go live today for all these different platforms except for the Switch 2. Well, it turns out when they said Switch 2 is coming later, they really meant like an hour later. This was a follow-up to their 2.3 update announcement, where they say, Update 2.3 is being rolled out on Nintendo Switch 2 as we speak. I'm not really sure what happened here, because they did make it seem like it was, okay, so it was coming out, this was 9 hours before this, and they said, oh yeah, Update 2.3 will arrive later on Switch 2, and then again, like 10 hours later, oh yeah, it's rolling out now. People were shocked by this because I saw people tagging me like, hey, there's an update right now for Cyberpunk, and it looks to be 2.3, and that was before even this was announced. So I don't know, maybe Nintendo got back with them quickly, and they went ahead and pushed it through, and everything was approved, and they could then just get the update out there. But I mean, Cyberpunk on the Switch 2 has been selling well, it seems, so yeah, maybe they got priority on that. Hard to say. But it seems like even that rollout caught them a bit off guard, as it did everyone else. Still, pretty cool to see that 2.3 did come out just about in parity for timing. I mean, same day for the Switch 2 as well as all the other platforms. So if you're waiting for it, go check it out. You should have an update right now on your Switch 2 for Cyberpunk. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Switch 2 and Nintendo pushing a firmware update that looked pretty basic until everyone started going back and testing some of their back catalog and realizing that there were some updates under the hood. First, though, we can see this over on Nintendo's website, and this is version 20.2.0. It was released on July 14th. Some of the bullet points here, naturally, they have general system stability improvements to enhance the user's experience, as well as fix an issue where you could not proceed past searching for networks and internet settings within system settings, and fixed an issue where parental control settings were not transferred to Nintendo Switch 2 from Nintendo Switch in certain circumstances during a system transfer. Again, seems pretty straightforward. However, that general system stability improvements to enhance the user's experience is very general, and because of this, people decided to go back and check some games. So one example here, Oatmeal Dome, says that version 20.2.0 fixes some problems with Switch 1 backwards compatibility. I can personally confirm that Portal 2 no longer crashes after updating. If you have some problematic games, update your console and try them out. So to my understanding with Portal 2, there was like an online initial check that was messing with the Switch 2, and that's why it wasn't loading initially. If you put the Switch 2 in airplane mode at that time, you could get past it and the game would work. So that seemed to be kind of a small update they had to fix around leaderboards or something, but seems like they did here. And it also, some games did get like the update July 14th now as like the latest update that it has. So funny enough, Super Mario 3D All-Stars. All right, and there's a funny headline. I think it's GameSpot. A Mario game you can't buy anymore just got a Switch 2 update. It just says that it improves gameplay on the new console. Some have wondered if maybe they did something at Nintendo with like the UI being upscaled differently, and people are still kind of searching to see exactly what the deal was here. Again, some are wondering if, is this 1080p now and it's upscaled? But here's the thing with 3D All-Stars that naturally you can't buy it anymore technically. I mean, you can find it physically. Has anyone checked in on that market though recently? Because I just did, and like here it is at GameStop, going for $120. And for a while there were so many of these that were printed and shipped out by Nintendo. We didn't feel the market yet like we are now. And yes, GameStop, who they've done stuff like this before when games were new even. So I remember with Xenoblade Chronicles, that was a thing on the Wii where turns out it was more expensive online used than stores would get in at MSRP new. And man, there were a lot of like new used copies at GameStop for $80. It was a very strange thing that was going on. I don't know how that could have happened at all. Certainly GameStop didn't open them and put them out used. But I mean, this is just kind of where we are with Mario 3D All-Stars and Nintendo pushing an update. Look, if you already have the game, this is great because, oh, wow, yeah, you can't buy it anymore, but I have it and I would like them to update it. But it is that frustrating thing of they really had to remove it digitally. Like, come on. I know Mario 64 is in NSO, and like Mario Sunshine will go to GameCube, but like Mario Galaxy just kind of hang out there. Maybe there's a Galaxy 1 and 2 double pack, and that's something they do. But Mario 3D All-Stars was a really cool release that just got taken away, and again, for the anniversary, but like digitally. So that's where you see with the market now. Annoying. But some of the other stuff, apparently Harvestella, the PAL version now works, and many more things are being tested. So I wanted to bring this up just to let you know if there was a game that wasn't functioning correctly, now might be a good time after you update your Switch 2 to try it out again. And then, hey, if you find that it works or there were general improvements, let me know down in the comments in which game that was. Next up, let's talk about Valve and something I think they're going to have issues with going forward when it comes to AI games on Steam. Now, we already know that Valve has like a whole section where you can like voluntarily put in that you've used AI in your game, and I think in some cases there are points where that you had to. But we are seeing a general rise of AI filling in a lot for developers, not only with games, but also applications, websites, the whole thing. When it comes to coding, it seems like using AI does make it a lot easier, especially if you just don't know how to code at all. You can just ask AI to do it for you with varying results from what I've seen. Now, let's take a look. This is posted over on VGC, who says Steam games disclosing the use of generative AI have increased by 800% so far this year. That's according to an analysis of generative AI games on Steam by Totally Human, which we'll take their word for now, which suggests that nearly 8,000 titles released on Steam now disclose Gen AI usage compared to 1,000 a year ago. I mean, 8,000 titles now versus 1,000 last year. That's 7% of the total Steam library and 20% of all games released so far in 2025. It's also worth noting that although Steam requires games that use generative AI in their development to disclose the use, such disclosures are voluntary, okay? So the actual number of games created using Gen AI is likely higher than the 8,000 figure. We are still in this phase, I say still, which we'll get to that in a second, in this phase of AI generally creates a lot of backlash online with social media and just in gaming. And I say currently because I feel like if you are like in the younger generation right now, even like much younger generation, and you grow up with AI, it probably won't be a big thing for you necessarily when you get to into your 20s or something. Now, I think it'll be a big thing for you, but I think we'll be kind of used to it, you know, whereas like, so if I see a wireless controller, I go, man, remember the days of having to sit 6 feet from the console? This is great. Whereas people who, the PS3 and the 360 were their first system, they've always just known wireless controllers. It's kind of like that mentality, right? So in this case, though, with Valve, every year, 2,000 to 3,000 more games release in that year. In fact, in 2024, 19,000 games came out in 1 year for a platform. That is absolutely ridiculous. And that's without the heavy use of AI. As they mentioned, 1,000 games at least said that they used AI in some regard last year, 8,000 now. So think about 5 years from now. Is Valve going to get to a point where 50,000 games come out in a year? Something crazy. It's possible. And then what does that make Steam look like? Because that just sounds like a disaster to try to navigate through every day. Like 1,000 some odd games come out, how do you, or 500 games. How do you deal with that? It just seems crazy to me, and that's something Valve is going to have to figure out, and quickly. At least it seems now with what they're doing with at least labeling your games using AI or generative AI. They are aware of this, but whew, this is where things get interesting. How much are they willing to really curate, and how annoying will that be maybe for the audience out there who wants just complete free market when it comes to Steam? Next up, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. This covers sales from last week in video games, and naturally that'll continue the trend of seeing how the Switch 2 is doing, as well as the Switch 1. And it seems like that console has, from 2017, still has some fight left in it. Let's take a look, though, this over on, we can see install base for them. At the top, Mario Kart World still leading the way, 65,853. Naturally, it comes with the Switch 2, so it's going to be on these charts consistently at the top for quite some time with that bundle, although that bundle should go away towards the end of this year, so that, of course, would then knock it down a bit. Tamagotchi Plaza is there at number 2, 13,736. Patapon 1 and 2 Replay on the Switch, very weird to see because that is something that I completely relate to Sony and the PSP from back in the day. But that was number 3, 8,871. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, there at number 4. Animal Crossing New Horizons at 5. Super Mario Party Jamboree at 6. Minecraft at 7. Death Stranding 2 at 8. That's actually crossed 87,000 units now. Then Tamagotchi Plaza 2 on the Switch 2. And then Fantasy Life I on the Switch. Moving over to the hardware, the Switch 2 at the top, 71,885. It has now crossed 1.6 million units sold just in Japan. So yeah, rapidly moving up the overall console sold in this region here. Then we have the Switch right below it, 13,411, almost doubling the sales of the PS5, despite the Switch 2 being out, which is absolutely ridiculous, actually. I know the PS5 is expensive there, but still, it's like, I guess you can't find a Switch 2. Buy a Switch. It's cool, do that. PS5, though, 7,262. The Xbox Series at 247. And the PS4 still somehow sold 30 systems. So while I do think it's funny that the Switch itself is still consistently selling 10,000 or more units each week, I mean, it is also quite impressive just in that region for Nintendo, because it just consistently is grinding out more and more units, and it does make me wonder when it will eventually stop there, since we still see the PS4, yes, selling 30 systems. That's a system from 2013. It does make me think that the Switch will legitimately just sell in Japan as long as Nintendo is willing to manufacture the device. So yeah, we've talked about the idea of it crossing 160 million units at some point, becoming the best-selling system of all time, like cementing its place there at the top. I do think it's still very possible, but it's going to just take a while. I think we're still a couple years out, and it's going to come down to how long Nintendo is just willing to support and manufacture them. I mean, fortunately for people who want to see it past 160 million systems, Nintendo has games lined up for 2026 for that platform, and it seems like they are more than willing to at least release games cross-gen at times, but also allow third parties to release a bunch of games on the Switch One and take advantage of that user base. So yeah, I think it'll get there. It'll just take a little bit more time to do so. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Shadow Labyrinth, which is a different take on Pac-Man. In fact, if you've watched the Amazon Secret Levels series and you remember that kind of strange episode about Pac-Man, this seems to be something that is completely related to it and almost a continuation of that idea. And it's sort of this Metroidvania kind of action-adventure take on it, which I do like some of the more creative aspects when you have a well-known franchise like Pac-Man and want to just try something new. Yeah, I'm on board, I'm interested. And in fact, I'm going to be picking this game up. It's also coming in at $30. Just be aware, to my understanding, on the Switch 2, the physical version is like a code in a box. So there's that. But we can see this posted, this over on Metacritic, currently coming in at a score of 74, 12 positive and 7 mixed, which unfortunately it's sitting right between that like 1 point difference of yellow and green. I believe when you go up to 75, you get a green on Metacritic. But let's take a look at some of the scores here. GameLiner says Shadow Labyrinth mixes old school Pac-Man with Metroidvania, and it works out surprisingly well. The story is mysterious, the exploration engaging, and the retro maze sections deliver a satisfying nostalgic kick. That's they gave it a 90. Noisy Pixel also gave it a 90, saying at a glance, Shadow Labyrinth may just seem like a startlingly different take on Pac-Man for the shock value, but it still follows the core tenets of the original game. Mazes, creature consumption, player choice navigation, and a power-up in the form of Gaia that effectively swaps the roles of prey and predator. Moving over to the opposite end of the spectrum here, we have 4p.de, who gave it a 50. Sometimes I read these sites. I have no idea where they are on Metacritic. But anyway, they give it a 55, an ambitious project that partially gets in its own way with an unattractive implementation. The interesting premise is offset by unmotivating gameplay, I should say. We have Push Square gives Shadow Labyrinth a 60, saying it's an admirable big swing that places Pac-Man in a strange new space. Unfortunately, while there are some fun elements taken from the arcade classic and a few neat ideas sprinkled in, the majority of the game is a by-the-numbers Metroidvania that doesn't quite come together. So, wow, yeah, definitely review scores all over the scale here, but again, I'm intrigued to at least try it out, and it coming in at the $30 price point versus, oh, it's $50, $60, $70, it does make it a bit easier of a buy there. Just, again, to see what exactly they come up here with a Metroidvania kind of dark tone, like Pac-Man game with some action elements to it, but apparently still having some really cool ideas where it goes back to you just being Pac-Man, like rolling around, eating ghosts and pellets and stuff. So I'll check it out when I get a chance. Right now, though, I am on Donkey Kong Bonanza, which has been an absolute blast. But I guess after that, we then roll into next week. I'll have a chance with Shadow Labyrinth before, I think, Wu Chang Fallen Feathers comes out. So busy times right now. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what did you think about the Mortal Kombat 2 movie trailer? Okay, 49% say it looks okay, 34% say it looks great, and only 17% say it looks bad. Hey, for a movie nowadays online, if you get only 17% of people to say it looks bad, you're probably on the right track. Again, I did like the first Mortal Kombat movie that they did recently, like the reboot and stuff. I thought it was fun, and it had some good spots for some of the more iconic characters. And so from what I've seen here, kind of the same thing, right? And Johnny Cage is character I wanted to see sort of in this new universe for Mortal Kombat. I have to see how Carl Urban kind of handles all of this, because while he did have still some of the sarcastic nature of Johnny Cage, he didn't really look like he was going to be that annoying sarcastic character, which again might not be a bad thing. I just have to see exactly how it plays out, and I guess I'll find out in October when it releases. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Pretty Win, who says, I think the physical version for Sonic Racing is releasing later only because they were planning for a game keycard originally, and when they saw the reaction to that, they had to scramble to pivot to get the physical cartridges. So I doubt this is going to be a thing that happens often. Now, I do think we are still in that like year one growing pains or discovery where they're realizing, yes, the game keycard stuff that we kind of thought was going to work, as apparently third parties were thanking Nintendo for it, feels like Sega was one of them just based on their approach so far, where everything's a game key card, it seems like they're realizing, maybe that's not the right path currently. Although, I have to see one of these 64GB cartridges be used in something that's not $70 or more. Okay, so that's kind of where we are currently. Everything below that seems just default to game keycard, and I assume it's the pricing around that 64GB cartridge, which means when we see a $60 or a $50 game be all in the cartridge, that's when I have to assume that Nintendo has figured something out in the background when it comes to cost of the cartridge. Otherwise, though, anything below 70, I assume, is going to have the game key card badge on the front of that box art, and that is something Nintendo certainly has to figure out. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe want to hear some of our thoughts around the Switch 2 after the first month. I got a couple of other creators together and did an hour-long podcast, and I'll leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.